Welcome to First Dates and Soulmates, where we believe that your reading can be both smart and smutty. I am your co-host, Meg Casebolt.
And I am Nikki McKnight.
And we are joined today by Allison Whaley from Bothered Stories. Allison, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Now, Allison, I think you and I were connected by our mutual friend Kim like over a year ago when you had this idea and you were doing the market research and you were trying to figure out, like, is there a space in the marketplace for an offer like Bothered Stories? So I'd love to hear from you, like, what is botheredstories.com and where did the idea come from?
Yay, thank you so much. Yes, Meg, you and I met before Bothered Stories was live, and not even before it was live. Like, I don't even know if I had settled on an idea yet. I was very exploratory at the time. And I was like, Meg has a podcast and she's a writer. Like, I've got to talk to her. So thank you for giving me your time. I still appreciate that coffee chat we had. But yeah, since then, I have launched a company called Bothered Stories, which I'm so excited about. We just launched this year. So we're new, we're fresh, we're hot off the press. Yay! And I'm honestly like just so proud of it and so excited for what can be. Okay, here, let me tell you about Bothered Stories. We are a site for short, smutty fiction. I like to say we're your home for smart smut. It is all short form, so it's all going to be short stories. We're not talking romance novels. We're talking bingeable, snackable, high heat, incredibly well-written content. If you know you want that, come to our site. And if you are a romance novel reader, we're kind of your perfect thing to throw in between novels when you haven't figured out what you're going to read yet and you want something that's well written, you want something that's story driven and also really hot. Like, just slot us in, because that's what we're there for.
You just said slot us in and I heard slut us in, and it kind of still worked.
It could work both ways.
I mean, I could have said slide us in, and then like there's a lot of euphemisms there going on. I know. It's fun. All the play on words you can do with marketing in this space is like already getting me excited from a marketing perspective. But yeah, and you'll get, if you sign up for Bothered Stories, for example, you will get us one of two ways. Number one, we send out a newsletter on the first and third Sundays of the month. So it's like your little treat we drop in, where we tell you all our recently released content. And we try to usually have a theme, like a spring theme or, whatever. And then also there's our online library. You can go on 24/7, search by category, search by trope, and find, whatever you're looking for at any time.
I like it. Just like, a little quick pick me up in between meetings, for example.
Yeah.
Like I would, there you go. See, I would love to kind of put this out as a reference and see if this makes sense. So as a millennial, I grew up in an era where porn and smut was not readily available online because the internet didn't exist yet. So some of us elder folks might be familiar with an old publication, I don't even know if it still exists now, called Penthouse. And it was a pornography magazine. And one of the things I remember, don't ask me why, this is something I remember, they had, like, was it Penthouse Forum? And it was these short submissions where it was just like, here's erotica, read it and go.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's interesting you say that, because I think there is a lot of erotica out there. There's a site called Literotica, probably most people are familiar with just tons of erotica for free. But I would say from my own perusal, much of the erotica is, to be honest, it's super cringy. Like it's not always well written. It's oftentimes it makes you feel uncomfortable, not good. And the quality of the writing just varies widely. So one of our promises at Bothered Stories is the quality of the writing will be excellent. It will be the same quality you'd be looking for. And, your New York Times best-selling published novels you will find at Bothered Stories, and it's also erotica. And so, I don't always know exactly what to call us. Are we erotica? Are we short stories, but high-heat short stories? We're both. We're everything. Yeah, and I would say we really do appeal to the romance novel reader that likes their high-heat romance. That's kind of our bread and butter. If you really just want porn, like you really just want sex on a page, you might not find exactly what you're looking for at Bothered Stories because our stories tend to have plot line. They tend to have character development. The sex is meaningful to them. It's not just sex. So anyway, that's just a little bit more about the content itself.
I love what you talked about cringe. As someone who identifies more on the ACE scale, there's a lot of things about sex that, we were joking beforehand that like, I just find gross. Like bodies are weird to me. It's not something like I'm not sex averse. It's not high on my priority list. So when I hear sometimes like erotica, and I read a lot, like I love consuming media. And there are a lot of times when we get into the sex scenes, I'm like, I gotta skip this. And part of it is because I'm just like averse to it. It's not particularly interesting to me. And most of the time though, it's because I find the writing really cringe. And I've been spending far too much time on Threads over the last couple of weeks. As listeners know, First Dates and Soulmates now has a Threads account, and I've just been doing weird shit over there. There's a whole debate right now about using the words slick folds.
Yes, I've seen
to describe a person's parts. And can we come up with other things? And other people are like, no, like, why can't we use that? And other people are like, oh my God, it's so tired. It's like, throbbing members and things like that. So I think the words used in high heat sex scenes can sometimes feel cringe. So I love that you're talking about this idea that we can have high heat, sexy, spicy things, however you want to describe it. And they can just be well written. It doesn't have to be like slapdash. My slick folds were entered into by a throbbing bratwurst, to quote from 10 Things I Hate About You. But I think quality is something that people really appreciate. And like, I just like this idea that I can go read something that I still might get uncomfortable by just because of who I am. But I'm like, I can still admire the craft behind going, this is a beautiful turn of phrase as they talk about fucking.
I'm just imagining the reels that you're going to cut from your own self right now.
Oh my God. I'm still recovering from slick folds were entered by his bratwurst. So hold on.
Which, like, passive voice. We're not looking for passive voice here.
Right. First of all, don't use passive in a sex scene.
Thank you. I'm so sorry.
Voice, people.
Active voice. We're participating.
The bratwurst entered the slick folds.
Oh my God.
Oh man, it kind of feels like you have like a pair of dice or something, or playing Mad Libs. It's like an adjective describing moistness, and something that describes many layers, and you're like moist phyllo dough, and just like off you go. Like we're making sexy spanakopita. I don't know, but this is I digress.
Well, Nikki,
in terms of craft.
So no, it's pertinent because I will share that in our editorial guidelines at Bothered Stories that authors reference when they're submitting to us or when we're working with them on editing a story, we actually do address this in our editorial guidelines. And one of the things we say is do not use words for body parts that are not used in everyday life. And we call out certain words like member and Johnson. Those will not be published. They will not be published in Bothered Stories. Mm-hmm. And we call this out in the editorial guidelines to kind of say like just be very clear. If you use writing like this, we're not going to consider you. But also B, set the tone and tenor for the quality and type of writing that we're looking for. So anyway, it's not a digression. It is very relevant because we're talking about what makes this style of writing feel good, read well, be interesting, not be cringy, and all of these things. The word choices you use certainly matters.
Ooh. Yeah, and I want to talk more about that tonally and like editorially, and you, Allison, as like the curator of this, sure. Being able to make sure that the quality is of a certain level, but also that people are not being thrown around between different short stories that feel like they don't belong as part of an anthology or a body of work, where like, sometimes I'll even go from like, contemporary to historical to fantasy, and the language changes because of the norms of those subgenres where, historical tends to be much more about pleasure and it's a little bit softer, and it does have things like the rainwater and the petals, and it's a bit more metaphorical as a subgenre. Not always, but sometimes. And then you get some like very spicy erotica that's just like, it's the C word. And that's a huge spectrum of word choice and semantic like consistency that you are managing from your, and yes, you have editorial guidelines, but how are you like judging and curating what fits your tone?
I think A couple of things come to mind in answer to that question. The first thing is all of our stories are high heat. So we do not have closed door stories. So that is consistent across the board. And if you become a member of Bothered Stories, you become a member because you want that. That's something that you want. So I'm just thinking of some historical fiction novels that certainly are sexy and they're certainly romance, but they're more closed door. I think the fact that we are open door, high heat, sex on the page sets some consistency among all our stories. Now, the other thing you mentioned was kind of perhaps extremity or spiciness of word choice, like the C word versus not. I think we do give authors we want authors to showcase their own unique voice in the stories. So you will get stories that feel like they're coming from different voices, as you should, depending on genre, depending on author. But there are some things we are looking for across the board that make the stories really good. And that is how we care for the reader, I would say. And that's how we because I care a lot about this. Like if you become a member of Bothered Stories, I want you to enjoy all of the stories we have. I want you to trust that there's a certain level of quality you just know you're going to get from Bothered Stories that you won't get from, say, Literotica. And even if you might not like a particular story, you will feel cared for as a reader, right? And so, here are some of the ways that we do that. Number one, all of our stories have to have character development. A character, you'll read a story, and our character will be different at the beginning than they were different at the end than they were at the beginning, and you will see that no matter what the genre is, no matter who the author is. Number two, there will be a storyline and there will be a plot line that's not just the sex. So the plot line isn't this happened, leading to sex, the end. The plot line is some other thing that happened and sex was integral to that plot line, but not the plot line. And I promise you that's what makes sex really hot in stories. If you're listening to this and you're like, well, to make a hot story, shouldn't it be about the sex? No, just trust me. If the plot line is like two spies on a mission competing and then they end up having sex, that is way hotter than just two people that want sex and then have it.
I love that you brought that up, Allison, because I'm a huge movie nerd. I love screenplay. I love film production. And when we think about action movies, action scenes in a film still have to move the plot forward. And the best action scenes or the action set pieces in film are ones that can show character development and move the story forward. Seeing Liam Neeson kick ass in Taken 7 or whatever he's doing, like, it's cool. But if we don't see development from him in that scene, or the plot isn't being kicked forward as he kicks someone in the face, by the time you get to the third action scene in the movie, you're bored. Because you're like, okay, cool. Like, the stunt work is fat. I love all of this. But like, I need to see something progressing in here, which is why, like, I love action films. I love action adventure films. The best ones, to your point, are the ones that can, in an action set piece, which honestly, same energy as a sex scene in many ways. It's high heat explosions of many kinds, but it's the one that is moving plot, but probably more importantly, it's moving characters forward. Because otherwise, I'm like, punch kick, sweet deal.
Yes.
Cool, I guess. But again, by the time you get to the fourth one, I'm bored.
Exactly. That's a perfect analogy, Nikki. And like, sex is the same way in stories. And then I would say the other way that we kind of care for the reader is similar to your HEA in a romance novel, is every story has to leave you feeling good in your body. What's cool about short stories that's different than romance novels is the two characters don't have to end up together. Like, not all short stories are like two distinct characters who are not in love and they end up in love. You can have different storylines, but the story has to leave you feeling good in your body. That's the point. And our stories will do that. And then Meg, the other way that like I just try to make sure we care for the reader in terms of expectations, specifically around language and like sex acts, is we have a very robust tagging system. And at the beginning of every story, up at the top, we list the key, I'm calling them tags, but maybe to a reader, it's just like a components or elements of a story that you might want to know about in advance. So if there's BDSM or kink in a story, it'll say that at the top. And if that's not your thing or that makes you uncomfortable, then you'll know not to read that story.
Yeah, I like that you're mentioning two things, which is both like somatic awareness for the reader and psychological safety. And we've talked about both of these previously, where it's like, romance should give you a little dopamine hit
Yep.
reading erotica should give you a little bit of like a serotonin, right? Like there should be some sort of reaction in your central nervous system, not just I read this thing and it's hot, but like what does that do for me as a reader? And then also the safety component. And Nikki, you and I talked about this a lot in the actress episode, and I pronounced actress right this time, where it's like one of the reasons that I think people reach for romance, especially in, you know, socially or politically difficult times, is because there is that understanding that at the end of it, there will be something satisfying and that things will work out. And, you know, in the case of short stories, you don't necessarily have the full, like, we're going to have, you know, get married and have babies, like that sort of old school HEA. Mm-hmm. But there is this feeling of, we're not going to leave you hanging. We're not going to just like kill off this character for no reason. There's going to be some sort of satisfying ending, even if it isn't happily ever forever. It's a satisfying, what's the phrase that we used in 2 episodes ago, Nikki?
Emotionally satisfying and optimistic ending is kind of like the official quote unquote definition for romance.
I like that. And what's cool about short stories is you even though it's short, so in some ways it's more narrow in what an author can do, because it's not necessarily the romance genre. It actually has a little bit more freedom in what you can do. So we have one short story where a guy who's like involved in the mafia and has to, it's a little weird, but he has to break into a department store and steal something in the middle of the night. This mannequin in the department store comes to life. And he ends up having this like affair with this mannequin who becomes a real person, but during the day goes back to being a mannequin.
It is both a heist and a sentient object.
Yes.
This is like a bingo card come to life.
Yes. Exactly. And he like kind of falls for her, so he starts returning, and they create this relationship. And in the end, I don't want to give it away, but in the end, I'll just say that they don't end up as two happy humans as a couple for the rest of their life, but the author does care for you. And it's just an example of something I feel like couldn't quite happen within the romance genre, but can within the short story format. And one of our authors, Angelina Lopez, who is a New York Times bestselling author, she talks a lot about this for short stories, how she uses short stories as a mechanism to experiment a little bit outside of the romance genre, but still write like high heat, sexy stories, but she just gets to have a little more fun with it in certain ways, even though it is a short story. So I really love that about bothered stories, about short stories. And I think there's something in that there for readers too.
Can we talk format of like how long is a short story? How many do you get with a subscription? How many different authors do you have in your sort of body of work?
Yes. Great. So I will, since Meg's a writer, I will tell her word count, but then I'll translate that for the reader. So our short stories are usually anywhere from 3,000 to 5,000 words, maybe 6,000 words in between there. And for a reader, that's like 20 to 35 minutes of reading. So maybe a 30-minute read is what that means. We at Bothered Stories publish New York Times bestselling authors. I just mentioned Angelina Lopez. We also have a story by Sierra Simone on our site right now, as well as emerging voices. So if you're a writer and you're listening to this, you can submit to us. Just submit your piece to write at Bothered Stories. If you go to our website, there's a web page that's for writers. So check that out. So we publish all different voices and all different kind of levels, if you will, of authors. And when we launched, we had, at that point, I already had 50-ish, a repository of 50-ish authors who were writing for us. So I waited to launch Bothered Stories until I had a sizable content library, because I didn't want to go to market and be like, here's the 5 stories I have for you. I wanted to launch and actually have something to give our readers. So we have about 50 authors right now, or at launch, and more are coming, and we're growing. We publish a new story every week. So it's a continual supply of content. We got your back. Like, come read us and you'll keep getting more if you like it. And the other thing that I didn't mention before, which is very important to me, is for every newsletter we send, I make sure that there's at least one piece of queer content, because I want to build a really diverse library. So I want to make sure that we're having lots of sapphic stories, male-male romance, group. Of course, we've got your male-female, contemporary romance stories. We've got a lot of those, but it's really important to me that I'm bringing in stories for everybody. I'm also making a big effort right now to bring in authors of color and making sure that we have those represented both as authors as well as characters on the page. So, and that's just more a little bit of our mission. But right now, like, especially for the queer community, there is not a good home to find erotic content for you, to find stories for you. The romance novels centering queer characters has skyrocketed. Like, thankfully, we're seeing a lot more in the past 5 years, which is great. But I really wanted to make sure Bothered Stories has content for that community as well.
I think there's something, you know, from a marketing perspective, as people who like run businesses, and Meg, I know is the big marketing brain between the two of us. I'm more on like the experiential side, but I think about all of the different, circles of types of, there's type of content in terms of, we'll call it length. There is type of authorship, and you've brought up like the different ways that diverse voices and diverse stories can come into it. There's another circle that is, I'll call it the tropes that are going to be present. And then there's another type that another circle I'm going to call like the type of sexual relationship. Like, what are we seeing? Is it something that's a little bit more kinky, or is it a little bit more vanilla? Is it group? Is it a pair? Are there things like voyeurism in there? Is there exhibition? Like, there's all of these kind of like circles of identities, circles of voices, circles of types that can come into it. And I really love when we think of romance as having to include all of those, right? Mm-hmm. We talked in a previous episode about the concept of happy ever after in romance, and does it require it? Yes. We talked a little bit about the RWA through the 70s, 80s, 90s, and how the definition of what happy was changed as more diverse voices and diverse stories got to be told. And I love that this could also be true with smart smut. Because one of the things we talked about in that episode was, do we think this reaction from some readers, some writers, some publishers to make romance more serious comes from, one, literary elitism, but two, also trying to get the genre taken more seriously by saying, oh, look, it's not just happy fluff. It's like there's angst and there's drama. And that's why still a lot of my friends are like, I read fairy smut. I'm like, oh, you read fairy smut? Like, loud and proud, girl. But I feel like I like when we can make deliberate choices on the types of sexy stories we are talking about, and centering the fact that it is a sexy story, because we don't need to prescribe to this like, oh no, it's romance. It has to be emotional, right? Otherwise it's not a valid form of literary creation. Go fuck yourself. Soapbox.
It can be all, and it is all. And like, I think it appeals to everyone in a broad way. And heated rivalry, I know, like, Meg and I had a panel discussion on heated rivalry together a couple months ago. And what was so cool for me to observe the heated rivalry craze in our society at large was the cross-demographic appeal of that show, meaning men, women saw it and liked it. And it was very popular among all. And that's an interesting thing that came out of the beta research I did before I launched Bothered Stories. Is I had a big group of people come in and read a bunch of stories and receive it in different formats. And I was just trying to collect data on what do people like? How do I want to deliver this service? What type of story should I offer? And one of my findings was that when you make, at least for the beta program, they, part of the gist was they had to read this like collection of stories that I gave them over 4 months. People like everything. And I know I'm going to get pushed back because readers are going to be like, no, I only like second chance romance, male, contemporary, whatever. But that's not actually true. I mean, people have preferences, but in my beta reader program, at least, I had queer people that started out being like, I really only want to read queer stories. Please don't send me any like heterosexual characters. And I was like, too bad. You kind of have to read it for this. And then they would read the stories and they'd be like, oh, actually, that was really hot. You're right. Like that, if it's well written and done well, like I still found it hot. And vice versa. I had people that said, look, I'm married to a man. I really just want to read like male-female stories. And I made them read some sapphic stories. And they're like, oh, that was hot too. Cool. I would read that again.
You're just expanding horizons for everybody here. Yeah, doing the Lord's work.
I'm doing the Lord's work. But, it's, again, similarly to what we saw with heated rivalry. So, like, the point is when it's done well, we do like it all. And there's space for all of it there. And I know the publishing industry hasn't always believed that or shown that or invested in that. But someone like me, I get to come in as more of a startup vibe and with different values. And I get to say, hey, no, this is a core part of my mission. This is what I'm going to do. And guess what? Readers actually have shown me that they like it, that they like all of it and there's space for all of it.
And I think also like committing to a 300, 400 page book to try something out without knowing it can feel very overwhelming and like it's too big of a commitment. It's like my husband was like, Meg, you should watch Lost. And I was like, I am 20 years too late. And that is too long of a commitment for something that's already been spoiled. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, no, thank you. It's too much. But like with a short story, it's like, I can sit down for 20 minutes. And if I hate it, it's 20 minutes. But I might learn something about myself. I might discover a new author that I can then go into their back catalog because maybe I've tried Sapphic before. Maybe I've tried kink before and it hasn't landed right, but now I know that I can trust this author. And I can enter the world with them as my kind of safe on-ramp. And I'm hoping that the authors are also seeing a little boost too of like, oh, people read my short story and now I'm seeing my back catalog get some love because now they trust me to tell a story in a certain way with that psychological safety and with that emotional awareness.
I love that. And I think short stories are a great way to explore to explore various different things. So Nikki, to your point, like there's so many different things to explore. There's like the actual character relationships, there's the tropes, there's the sexuality, right? And I think short story is kind of like an easy in compared to a novel for a lot of people. I was actually talking about this with a sex therapist the other day who recommends erotica to couples that she counsels because reading erotica, short, high heat stories like bothered stories is a really interesting way and an easy in for couples to look at and be like, oh, what did I like about that? What did I not like? What turned me on? What didn't turn me on? And it almost gives them an avenue to talk about stuff where they're not really talking about their own relationship. They're talking about these characters, but it's enlightening for them and it's helpful. And so like, I thought that was fascinating, the role of smut, if you will, towards exploring your own personal desired needs and that within your partnership.
Yeah.
And again, I don't think you could ask someone to read a novel and do the same thing. It's got to be that short form and it's got to be good. It can't be cringy or it'll be a turn off from the get-go, right?
Yeah. I often think a big part of expanding your horizons and knowledge is giving someone the language to describe something. It's the idea of I don't know what I don't know, but if you don't know what you don't know, then how do you even make a step forward in figuring that out? So I love this idea of these small, like erotica amuse-bouche. They're getting a scenario like, oh, okay, I have language now to describe this, or I have an example that I can call back to. I don't remember who had invented the erotic blueprint. Was it Jaya? I don't remember. This was big. This was big a couple years ago, I remember. And it was, it was used for couples or for individuals to discover essentially what their erotic blueprint or their arousal template was. I'm a kinky this, or I'm a this. I don't remember the type specifically. And I like that as a tool, again, because I like this idea of giving people language and frameworks to help them identify themselves or give them language to have discussions about things. But when I think about couples, when it has to be about you, I can imagine the barrier that comes with that in terms of being vulnerable and having to say to your partner, well, I'm this, you're this, that having a conversation about that can be challenging. But if you can insert, these stories that are not about them, it's about someone else. It's fiction. And then they can have a reaction to it that they can discuss. It gives them a little bit of like that safe separation to be, I'm not judging us or our relationship or what is currently present in our reality, but let's look at this imagined reality and have a discussion about that. And it makes conversations easier. A running joke on the show is how many problems could be solved by people having adult conversations? You know what? People don't always have the tools to have those adult conversations. This really could be a tool to have adult conversations, which when I think about it is hilarious to me. Read porn, get a better relationship. It's great for everybody.
Read good porn.
Good porn, quality erotica.
Well, totally. And also smut is fun. So you take it adds a levity to it. It's just fun. And you get to kind of explore and find language, etc. But I think beyond, what we're talking about right here is couples, because I brought up the sex therapist that uses smut in her work. But I think this idea of you guys are avid readers, so you know this as well, but this idea of we resonate with fictional characters, and fictional characters can help us understand our own selves better, I think is incredibly potent and has far-reaching implications, and you actually can accomplish it in short form, which I think a lot of people don't realize. But we have a story on our site right now called Snow Piled Up to the Clouds, which is a trans awakening. It's a young male. He's 22 years old. He's fresh out of college. And he has this experience with this stranger that helps him understand that he was meant to be a female. And that actually can be a really positive experience. And people can see him in a positive light. And it's a short story. But my hope is that someone reads that story at the right time in their life and it moves them and helps them understand themselves better. And I guess you could say, well, it doesn't need to be a smutty story. It could be any story. Of course. Oh my God. Yes, of course. That's what fiction does. But I think there can be a lot of strife and angst for people around their own sexuality, around their own sexual desires and preferences, because it's incredibly taboo in our society. It's not something we're allowed to talk about. So I actually think providing stories that touch on these topics in incredibly positive and enlightening ways is super helpful given the societal structure that we live in.
Yeah, and I want to talk about the power of curation for that too, because my first book was transgender romance, and it's filed on that shelf. It does fairly well holding steady on that shelf, but what it's surrounded with is there are absolutely beautifully written transgender romances that are also in on the shelf in the also box, but there's also a lot of really negative triggering stuff in the transgender romance list, where it's sissification, it's you wake up one day and you're another gender and you have to live with it, it's biological, people messing with your biology and giving you a different body and you have to adjust to that, it's people dressing you up to make fun of you when you realize things. It's very troublesome, some of the other things that are on the shelf that I would read, and especially when I was writing Peppermint Bark, I wanted to figure out what the gender or the genre norms were for transgender romance, and a lot of it made my stomach turn, where I was just this is not what I don't understand how these books are getting so many downloads and reads, but not to yuck someone else's yum, but yuck. Maybe that's just me and my kind of progressive approach to it, or maybe there's just a different side of this that for some people it's sci-fi fantasy and it's not about transgender identity in a cultural context. But for me, if I had read that and thought, oh, that's what transgender romance is, it would have turned me off to the entire shelf. But if then I had, even as a cis woman, if I had that short story of, oh, it could be this too. And having that curated experience of, we know that Bothered Stories isn't going to have kind of the problematic 30-minute reads that you find when you're just browsing Amazon. Because I think that's one of the things that, how do you, if people were to say to you, how is this different than just I have Kindle Unlimited, I could go find short stories, why would I choose this? What would be some of those other benefits, or do you want to speak a little bit to the curation process of that?
I think you're spot on, Meg, that the curation is incredibly important, and it's a key value proposition, to use a business term, that Bothered Stories offers to the reader. Is we are curating pieces for you. We're sending them out in your newsletter, and every single one will not only be well written, but will make you feel good in your body. And we're going to throw some diverse things at you. We might have I'm trying to think of what would be an example of diverse things, but we do have historical. We have a beautiful story featuring tentacles. That's all I'll say. We have contemporary, but so it runs the gamut in terms of trope, in terms of premise, in terms of setting, but it is empowering. Every story is empowering. And one of my goals as founder is to empower the readers and to change cultural norms change patriarchal cultural norms around sex and pleasure. And so if every single story isn't working to change some sort of ingrained message we've gotten around sex and pleasure, then I'm not doing my job. And I think some of the stories you just mentioned, Meg, would not meet that criteria. Yeah. And that is unfortunate. Like I just right now, as you were talking, was imagining myself if I were struggling with my gender identity as a trans person and I picked up some of those books, I think they would be really disturbing. I lament that they might get categorized as like a trans awakening.
And they're poorly written.
Yeah.
Not all of them, but many of them are poorly written. And I think that curation is becoming even more important. Recommendation engines are becoming even more important since 2022, since generative AI has risen, because I'm seeing more and more people saying like, oh, I just asked AI to write me something and I put it in my formatting tool and I put it on the internet. And it's like, well, you don't even know what's in your own book. Let alone having it be curated and recommended. Like, I just thought on Threads, I just saw somebody share that they had seen a post that was like, I just wrote this software that will read what generative AI created for you and tell you the tropes so you can write the blurb. And I'm like, you're not even reading your own work, you know? And so I think that there's the work of recommendation and curation is going to be that much more important moving forward because the market is just getting flooded with slop. Not that everything that AI touches is slop, but like the quality of the work. There's always been outliers. There's always been crappy writing. And self-publishing is so broad that anybody can create. And there's some super fantastic, incredible writers in self-publishing, and there's some garbage. And it's hard to know if you're in a marketplace without these mechanisms in place to make sure that it's quality.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. I don't want to get into a whole AI conversation, but it's a little scary. But to date, I would say any fiction I've seen AI write is very bad. Like it's just very, very bad. So yeah. But I will say we state on our website very clearly, we do not accept admissions by AI, and AI is not used in our writing or editing of any pieces.
Yeah, it's a whole soapbox for another day. It's something that kind of keeps popping up. But I love this idea of curation, and curation is a huge part of the work I do with like my clients in my day job, because the glorious thing about the rise and the ease of self-publishing is that so many more people get access. I don't want to say it's like it's democratized writing or decentralized writing and publishing. In some ways it has, in some ways we're still centralized, but more people can do it and more people can do it more easily, which is great. It reminds me of the glory days of like fanfiction.net and AO3. This still exists. The challenge I always had with those platforms, like I was a huge fanfiction.net nerd. It's where I first got into queer romance when I was like, when did the internet come out? I think I was 13, 14 when the internet came out, and I was like on fanfiction.net, and I was printing out 6-inch binders worth of stories because there's one phone line where people were on the internet. So if I wanted to read them, I had to get them in my binder. But it was this, like, I always had to rely on recommendations for what story to read, because if I was just left to peruse the whole platform, there would just be a lot of like not well written stuff. And honestly, I wrote some of it. Y'all, I wrote fan fiction when I was a preteen, and it was bad. It was not good. Like I look back, I don't have it anymore, but I think back and I was like, that was not very good. So this idea of curation in all things, I think, is so important right now, not just in writing. There's so much information out there. There's so many opportunities out there. There's so many different people you can learn from, read from, consume from, purchase from, give your money to. But it's how do we get a curated, filtered, bespoke view for me to help when I know what is important to me, when I know what my values are, when I know what I'm seeking, that can give me a very specific group of stories, for example, that I don't have to wade through pages and pages and pages of things that have been tagged as hurt comfort. And it's like, okay, well, I read that one's not very good. I'm going to move on to the next one. This is okay, but they haven't updated it in 2 years. It's probably not going to be updated. I'm going to move on to the next one. Like curation, I think, is going to be so important to reduce overwhelm and something one of my clients calls infobesity, because there's so much of it. But it also allows us to consume more, but in that increase in consumption is the increase in quality that goes with it.
Yeah.
I'm just going to really quickly say that I think the flip side, like the one side of the coin is curation and the other side is discernment. You know, it's like somebody else is helping you make the decision about what you might value and what you might appreciate. So it's not just what is the best of what's out there, but discerning like what is the quality and the experience that you want people to have outside of just what has the highest reviews.
Totally. And like readers at Bothered Stories will discern, like Bothered Stories is creating and providing content that aligns with what I'm looking for. Great, check, done. And if it doesn't match that, then you'll move along. But I think, around this idea of curation and discernment is, as there is a proliferation of free product, free writing, but could be free anything, there becomes an even greater need for curation. So it's almost like counterintuitive, but as there's more free writing out there, there is therefore a cohort of readers that are saying, I need it curated for me and I want to pay for that. And I think that's what we're seeing. And when you think about a site like Literotica, just to go back to the erotica piece, Literotica has so much content on there, but if you were to go on there, because I have, and you click on most popular, like most read, or just sort by most popular, most read, and I'll allow that to curate for me, you get a proliferation of stories that are all incest stories. It's all incest stories. Those are the most popular ones. And so if you're someone that likes to read smut and you're a woman, I think most women that like smart smut will not like that curated output. That is not the right fit for them. And so it's just a good example of like free stuff, even when it's curated, it's not necessarily going to be, right for you. And having someone that's values aligned that can curate it for you, can discern it and can filter and not filter, but vet by quality, I think will become increasingly valuable to the consumer. And like Meg, that sounds like what you needed or what trans readers need in that category of transgender romance novels, because it sounds like there's a lot that technically fall under the category that's not what those readers might be looking for.
But maybe that's just me, right? That's just me as a reader, because there were popular books in the same way that, you can find the incest stories. And if that's what you're looking for, they're easy to find. But you also, if that's a red flag for you and that's part of your trigger warnings and you want to avoid that, like it can be hard to avoid if it's not clearly delineated. So we as authors need to do a better job of making it clear what's in our stories. But we as readers also need to do a better job of finding places that can help us discern what is and isn't right for us as readers. So is this sort of the gap that you saw in the marketplace of, what made you say short stories? What made you say subscription model? Like when you were doing the test and the trial period, the beta period, like what information did you gather that helped you decide on this model?
A couple of things. And number one, I'll say it is a hypothesis. We just launched, right? We will see how we perform in the market, how we do, and we'll adapt accordingly based on the feedback I get from readers. But I would say from a market demand perspective or market opportunity perspective, romance as a genre, I mean, as you all know, it's $1 billion industry. People want to read it, and it's not decreasing in readership. It's increasing in readership. It's continually increasing in readership, which is just a good signal. It's a good signal for someone wanting to enter kind of the space. And not only is it increasing in readership, it's increasing in high heat. Like people increasingly want high heat romance. They're comfortable with sex on the page. We have these breakthrough success series that help to help the mainstreamification of romance and smut. I don't know if that's a word, but I'm using it, the mainstreamification.
We're going for it. I like it.
Yep. In Heated Rivalry just this year was a good example of that. You had the New York City mayor telling all 8 million of its citizens, like, go read queer smut I think it was in January, there was a snowstorm, and like that was his press conference advice. So like people want more of it, and it's growing. And I saw that in the market, there was no short form example of it anywhere. So no like introductory product if you didn't want to read a full novel, no kind of, if you did love novels, but you sometimes want like shorter snippets, like there was just nothing for you. And so I thought, okay, like I'll just invent this. I'll make it, I'll create it. Some of the like insights I got from the beta reader program was I had a couple of conversations. I remember one conversation with a woman who did an interview with me, like a one-on-one interview. She was at work when we scheduled it, and she didn't want anyone to know. So we took the interview in her car, but she had her video on. So she was like FaceTiming me in her car, and it was lovely. And she told me that in her favorite high heat romance novels, she bookmarks all the sex scenes because she likes to come back to them and read them later, especially when she like wants to like feel a certain way. She'll come back to her favorite well-written sex scenes, and she has them like bookmarked. And I was like, oh, okay. So like, you're not just using the romance novel as like a fiction novel to read. You're actually like using it for its well-written sex scenes, and you want it in short form. You just want to read that, like the chapter that contains that scene in it. So that was one cool insight where I was like, oh, okay, I could provide a really cool product that is already short form for you. I had another woman tell me a similar thing, that like when she is wanting, and now Nikki, I feel like I'm going to make you uncomfortable because I'm actually talking about sex in real life, but we're going to go there. Okay, we're going to. I had one woman say that when she's like wanting to get intimate with her partner and get in the mood, she will read certain romance novels and also go to certain similarly go to certain places in those novels. So I was like, oh, okay, like these women don't want literotica. They don't want cringy porn on the page. That's not what they want. But they're kind of makeshifting their own version of this using romance novels that they've read in the past. And so that was this insight for me for Bothered Stories.
I really like that kind of as a using romance, which is a genre, again, that gets a lot of criticism, or it's just fluff, or it's just smut. It seems to go to one of those two extremes. It either means nothing or it's way too horny and we're going to disrespect it. But using it essentially as like a warm-up or a masturbatory tool to like get in the mood with a partner or partners, like I love that. I was like, good for you all to like get into this, because again, going back to this idea of arousal templates, sometimes written word does things for people. Sometimes it has to be auditory. Sometimes it has to be visual. Like I hate audiobooks for how my brain works and the speed that I read at. I'm never going to be an audiobook person. I did try listening to audio erotica just to kind of get the vibe. And I'm like, no, it's way too slow and it's way too cringe for me, but I can read it. And that's fun. So I love too that like this idea of no, like I'm literally, this is it becomes almost like a sexual tool to use in intimate times with yourself, solo, with partner or partners. It's essentially, it's the written version of a vibrator. Like, I'm going to bring in this extra tool to either get me there or get me started. And I just appreciate the variety of the tools available to us.
Written version of a vibrator. I love that. And like, it's like even almost like the precursor to the vibrator. Like you can read it, on your, it's not like, I don't think our readers are actually in bed with a vibrator reading their stories. Although I think that's a great idea. I mean, you should definitely do that. But I think for a lot of people, it's sexy just to like have more sexy content percolating throughout your day. Like that's nice. And so it does that as well.
I think also like the world is on fucking fire. And sometimes you need that escape, and you don't have time for 300 pages of escape, but you have time for like 3,000 words of escape in your car, on your lunch break, on your commute, while the pot's boiling. You're like, I can get this done. It's
if I have to live in this capitalist hellscape with like politics being what they are, then I can damn well get an orgasm out of it just to get through my day. It's like
not even an orgasm, just like a little bit of dopamine, a little bit of serotonin, some like oxytocin.
Get some hormones going in there. I don't know, whatever the happy hormones are. Like, just get them all. Yeah. Get them all. This is valid.
I feel that all the time. People are like, I can't believe you're starting a smut company when Trump's president. And I'm like,
this is the best time.
What else am I going to do? Like, this is the best way I know to resist is to give you guys smut. So you're welcome.
Yep. That's like, this is the best time. How do we resist? We take the thing that they want to hide or the thing that they want to make other, and we make it public and loud.
Amen.
So let's bring our final question about this topic, which is like, what do you ship the most about short stories, about erotica, about the diversity of availability of content, about working with the authors? What do you ship the most about everything that we've discussed in this conversation today?
I think what excites me the most is the role that smut can play in people's lives, whether it's helping them understand themselves better, whether it's like the trans awakening example we gave, whether it's just getting a freaking break in a really tough day, that's uber important. I never want to downplay that. I never want to dismiss this. That is crucial. And so in that sense, smut can play a really crucial role in your life. And it does in mine. Like, I mean, and it does for both short form bothered stories, but also I'm an avid novel reader. And it's just so important. Like I can tell you in terms of novels, I just finished Angelina Lopez's novel, After Hours on Milagro Street. She's a bothered stories author. And I was like, I can't believe I haven't read her, first novel yet. And I know I'm late to the game. I think it was published 7 years ago. But that novel is fucking gorgeous, like literally gorgeous. It centers Latin American families and centers them in a way that you really get to know their culture. You just know this family really well. And today, in today's time, and the times we're living in right now in the United States of America, centering Latin America, love, legacy, families, lives is really important. It's really important that people read across the spectrum of lives, including Latin American lives, like right now. And so I read it with that lens. Like I had that lens on as I read it. It's like, that's what we should be prioritizing. And so the power of smut, well done smut, it's actually really important and it's powerful. And I think a lot of people don't see that, but I will die on my grave on that soapbox. And so anyway, that's just like, that's my answer to your question, Meg.
I'll build what I ship the most about it on top of yours, which is the breadth and the smorgasbord of being able to try new things. Because I think sometimes we do get stuck in these ruts, and like the tools that we use have algorithms that show us things that we are similar to what we've already done. Literally these titles that say, or these sections in your marketplace, if you're on a Kindle that says books like what you've already read. Mm-hmm. And so you can get really stuck in this echo chamber of, oh, well, the last 3 books that I've read are, MM contemporaries. So it's going to keep showing me MM contemporaries of white people. And maybe I want to move out of that. And so being able to have a way to test new ideas without feeling like, oh, I'm going to mess up my algorithm, or I'm not going to like it, and then I'm going to feel really bad about stopping, or whatever. Like, you have this opportunity to try something new that's bite size. The erotica moose bouche, as Nikki said.
Bite size.
Nikki, what about you? What do you ship the most?
I think I love that, Allison, I love that you brought up the story of that woman who bookmarks the pieces, because I think that's what I like about this, because, not to disclose too much about my sex life, but, I don't really need to have intimate relations with people. It's not, I'll take it or leave it, but it does not mean that like I'm not a sexual being. So this type of thing is actually what I enjoy, because, it provides a biological service for me. So I think that's important. Like I don't speak for all ace people, but as an ace person, I think sometimes you have to deal with biological needs. We love the hormones that get released when orgasms are in play. So I do love that we can still experience erotic or sexual things just in the way that we need it. To be like, cool, this was great. I feel great. Now I can move on with my day. So I love this idea of it being like a very well-written vibrator. I'm going to go with that is the metaphor I'm going to go with today, and why I really, really enjoy these. So y'all are welcome.
I actually really appreciate you saying that, because I haven't thought too much about the role of smut specifically for the ace identifying person. And so anyway, that was helpful for me, Nikki. So
there you go. Market research happening all over the place.
Every podcast is a focus group. So
yeah,
Allison, if people want to learn about Bothered Stories, they want to join as a member, they want to get on the newsletter, how do they find out more about you and about Bothered Stories?
Go to botheredstories.com. Just go to botheredstories.com. I highly recommend anybody can sign up to become a member and get for a 2-week free trial. No payment information required. So you don't have to give us your credit card, and you get access to everything for 2 weeks, and then you can decide if it's for you or not. So highly recommend. I make it easy. Botheredstories.com.
I love that. It's so easy. Amazing. All right. Well, before we go into the final question of what we are shipping this week, you know what else you can go do for like a real quick sec? It's head on over to your podcast provider of choice. Give us a follow. Give us a rating. Leave us a review. Even a 1-sentence review is absolutely delightful because it helps the algorithmic gods to which we all live under help more people find out about us. And we just really appreciate it. Do it once and you never have to do it again. I know we talk about this every week, but we very much appreciate it. All right. Let's talk about the good stuff. Meg, what are you shipping this week?
So I was on vacation last month. We were in Washington, D.C. And what you said earlier, Allison, about like how sexy it is to have 2 spies who just like take a break. Okay, so we went to the International Spy Museum. And have you guys ever been to the International Spy Museum in D.C.?
I have.
Or maybe it's just a spy museum. It's so cool. It is so cool. It's such a cool building. So each of us got a card at the top so we could go through and like get our spy disguises, and we had our spy keywords, and we all had our aliases. But then they also had all these incredible artifacts of like, this is an actual shoe that had a microphone in it. And this is the hook that picked up the submarine and put it onto a ship, and like so much cool shit in this place that like my Cold War history minor was just like firing on all cylinders.
Oh my gosh.
But then there was also, in case you were like, oh, is Meg a nerd? Yes, I am. Mm-hmm. But there were also these videos that you could watch throughout, so you could like sit down and watch the story. And there was this really beautiful video of an Israeli handler and a Palestinian spy who was in detainment by Hamas, and like how they supported each other, how a handler is... It's like being a spy is dangerous, being a spy handler is dangerous. This handler like came out of hiding to like speak on behalf on Capitol Hill of his spy, to be like, no, he's on our side, guys. Like, really beautiful story. And the whole fucking time I'm sitting there and going, how is this not a romance novel? How is this not an romance novel? I want to read.
Pretty sure I have that one for you, Meg.
Yeah, please. So my ship this week is not really, it's a ship for the Spy Museum, but it's also a request to listeners and a request to Nikki, which is, if y'all have either Cold War romance or spy romance, hit me up with recommendations, because I am now like craving spy romance and I haven't had a chance to go do my research on it yet. So that's my ship.
I love it. I got a list for you. And I also just really want to talk to the museum for my other podcast. Like, that's just a really cool experience. All right.
It's
making a note
so
for
cool.
that.
Meg, I think you need to write one though. Like, this needs to be your next genre. Just take a big departure from where you've been and try it out.
Maybe I'll write one for Bothered Stories, and then I can just test it out as like a test balloon and see if I even like writing it and submit it, and you can make a decision about it. But it won't be like a complete, because I feel like people are now like, where's book 4? Where's book 5? I need to know what happens with Elijah and Darius. I need it, and I can't like just fully... I can't leave the series midway.
You can't step away. Okay, so you're great. I love this idea better. So you're going to write a Bothered Stories short story featuring a spy and his handler.
There we go. Perfect. We'll see. We'll see if it happens. But it might just be one of those like, I wake up in the middle of the night and I start writing, and then it's 5,000 words, and we'll see what happens.
And I get a random email in the morning.
I love this. I love this for all of you. Allison, what are you shipping this week?
This week, I actually am shipping an event tomorrow night. So I'll just take a minute and talk about it because it's related to this podcast. We are bringing together romance and smut lovers in the Hudson Valley. They're all coming together in Hudson Valley's only queer bar, Unicorn Bar, tomorrow. Well, it won't be tomorrow when you guys release this, but at the time of the recording, it's mid-April. And we're going to have New York Times bestselling author Jennifer Probst there. We're going to have some trivia. There's a pop-up romance-specific bookshop there, as well as Crush Pleasure Shop, which is a kind of sexual wellness, sex toy, artfully curated shop. And I'm super excited just to like hang with people that get it, that love these stories, to talk, to bring the opportunity to bring folks together is just really nice. Yeah, and I have kind of dreams of doing this like throughout the country. So if you're listening to this and you live in some place and you're like, oh, I really want that too, I don't know, reach out to me. Maybe we can make this happen. And Nikki and Meg, I'm going to make one of you guys join me one of these days for
always
one
up
of
for
these
it.
events. So that's
Colin, I will be there.
Sweet. Okay.
Nikki, what about you? What are you shipping this week?
I have a book this week. It is called Stick Around, a Punk as Puck novel, book 1 in the Legends and Fury series. It's by E.M. Lindsay. I'm not a huge sports romance fan, but the reason I picked this up, not only it's because it's E.M. Lindsay and I love their work, is it is a hockey story where one of the male main characters is like an NHL player, and the other main male character is a disabled hockey player in like and essentially in this series, there is a disabled version of the NHL that's at the same level as the NHL. It's not just like a Paralympics or something like that. You have the NHL, and I think it's called the PPHL. And you know, one of the NHL guy is like kind of snarky and rude, and the idea is that NHL players kind of look down at the disabled hockey league, and they're like, oh, they're weird. So the other main character is blind, and he's the goalie. So the heads of the leagues pretty much say, I want, you know, NHL guys, go play with this other league because we want to get like that good press. And it's like enemies to lovers. It's really snarky, where he's like, even the goalie, he's like, even though I'm blind, I can stop every single shot that you make because I'm actually like a prodigy when it comes to being a goalie. And then you've got the NHL guy who's just like, fuck this guy, but literally I kind of want to fuck this guy. So it's like really high heat, spicy. E.M. Lindsay always does really, really great disability rep. So I loved reading a story where you have a PPHL goalie who is blind, but he does not let anybody fuck with him. He's like kind of an angry guy, which I really appreciate because, you know, I don't really want to get into like the disability virtue signaling of like, oh, they're blind, but like he does so much for his community. He's like, no, fuck all of you. I hate all of you, but I kind of want to fuck. So anyway, I like that one. It is Stick Around, Punk as Puck, Legends Fury, Book 1 by E.M. Lindsay. Amazing. Allison, thank you so much for joining us today and letting us talk all about the smart, smutty curation that you got going on. We're going to drop all of those links for you in the show notes. And we'd like to say thank you so much to all of you for listening. A couple ways you can support the show absolutely for free. As we said, rate, review, and subscribe on your podcast provider of choice. Give us a follow on social media. We are at First Dates and Soulmates on most platforms. I'm now having a lot of fun over on Threads, y'all. So if you want to come over on Threads, let's chat. We're having a good time. And if you have a little bit of money you want to send our way, a couple ways you can also do that. You can subscribe to the show on Substack. Subscribe for 1 month. Subscribe for many months. You can check out our merch store. It's on TeePublic, linked in the show notes. And we are now offering podcast sponsorships. So if you want to check out all that information that Meg has put together, it's all linked for you in the show notes. But, you know, we're just really appreciative that you are here. We love you soulmates that you listen each week. And we just love that we get the opportunity to talk about all things with you. And we're very grateful for it. Next week, we are doing an archetype deep dive. We're talking about himbos, my fluffy, masculine, muscly golden retrievers of characters. That's coming up for you next week. We'll see you then. Bye.